Well, I am Matt Manning, and today we are talking all things Disney as part of a podcast series on parenting, and this is Pastors on Pop. All right, well, today is like a new tide coming in because with me is no longer Jared Haley, but in his seat is the one and only James Johnson. So it's good to have you here today, James.
Great to be here.
James is stepping in as the new co-host with me on Pastors on Pop. And James's role here at Crossroads is as one of our pastors. He's like the pastor of all things discipleship. And so if you want to go like deep with God and really get your life in order, James is the guy to talk to, right?
It's a little pressure.
A lot of pressure there. Yeah, so... So as I think of more pressure to throw onto your shoulders, maybe just share a little bit with people who don't know you, a little bit about your story, who you are, who you're married to, what you love, that kind of thing.
Right on, yeah. So I have been married for 26 years to Gretchen, and we have two young adult kids. Our daughter's 20 and our son's 17. We'll be an empty nester next year.
So you excited about that, or is that like fear and trepidation?
I just don't know what to do with my hands. You know, it's like being a parent, and that's pretty all-consuming. So having time on your hands is kind of a scary thing.
You can expand your deck.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. Exactly. Learn karate.
There it is.
So we've moved around a bit as God's called us over the years. We lived in Tennessee, lived in Seattle for a while. We're coming up on our 4th year in Colorado. Absolutely love it here. A little bit about me. I love music and creativity and innovation. So really my passions are baseball and music of all kinds, and really just innovation and creative ideas. So over the years, I've studied and kind of looked at people that have changed culture, from Lance Armstrong before the drugs came out, right, to Bill Gates, to Walt Disney. I mean, these people that created something amazing, and I'm just super fascinated with individuals that are able to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I have a couple questions for you, and that you listed. So give me like your 20-second answers. All right. So
got it.
So what are your thoughts on the baseball lockout?
Play ball, boys.
All right, good. Nobody wants to hear billionaires and millionaires fighting with each other. That's it. Yeah. So you said you have a love for music. So what are your top 3 bands?
My top 3 bands, U2, Pearl Jam, and probably Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash.
Yeah, when my kids were small, and we bought them like the cheap MP3 players, and I loaded it with like 90% like U2 and Johnny Cash and like 3 worship songs.
Well, I feel like I really know you, and I feel like I learned something new about you with the whole Johnny Cash thing.
Oh yeah, storyteller, man.
Yeah. His stuff is great. So one of the other things that you said is that you're like your love of culture and building, and you mentioned Walt Disney, which you are like all things Walt Disney. Like you got photos in your office. I think I even saw like a photoshopped photo of you standing with Walt Disney at the opening of Disney World. Yeah. So Disney is like known as the most magical place in all of the world. And so recall your first visit to Disney.
Yeah. So I actually had to ask my mom how many times we went when I grew up, because I didn't remember. So we went twice.
Okay.
And oddly, I don't remember any of the visual experiences, but my memory is the smell of Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, yeah.
So
now, did you go California or Florida was your first one?
That's a big question.
Okay.
You answer first. Which one is the park? Is it land or
so,
world?
The first visit I ever had was at Disney World in Florida, and that's the one that I visited most often. And my first experience I actually remember because I went with my grandparents and then my whole mom's side of the family. And when it comes to that side of the family, they are very timely, and they want to make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. So we had to literally meet like every 90 minutes at the Princess Castle, which means that there was a lot of anxious moments because we were in line, and it was like at 3 o'clock, we got to be there. And if you're not, there was like, like family shaming that happened. And it was like, but we've been waiting, 85 minutes in line for Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, do we get out or do we go? And so I just remember, even as like a 7-year-old kid, like just how, how anxious driven Disney was that first time. And, we all had our own t-shirts, and when like foreigners go to Disney World and they have their signs and stuff, the Rep family had their own sign so that we knew. Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. So what is it for you? Where was that first visit? Was it California or Florida?
No, a Disneyland in California.
Okay.
We grew up in Northern California, and so it was just a drop down to it.
Cool.
And a Disneyland is always the park that Walt built for me.
I gotcha.
So Disney World was the dream that he didn't get to actually see, but the park has his fingerprints on it. So
gotcha.
it's just, it's always going to be the place for me.
That's cool. And so that is like your first visit and my first visit. Like, recall your most memorable trip to Disney.
So when our kids were little and we saved up the money for a trip down, and I seeing it through their eyes was life-changing. Matter of fact, I vividly remember, like, we came in the park, and you go under the train track, and you're in the hometown USA, and I remember seeing the castle, and I turned to my wife and I just said, I am so excited. And I wanted to pick my kids up and just run to the castle. And I actually used that illustration years later in a funeral.
Oh, okay.
Because I shared the picture of like all these promises of God, and they're on the horizon.
Yeah.
And like that feeling that I had of, I just want to grab the things that I love and run toward that destination.
Yeah.
But seeing the castle at the end of, and I didn't know what I was going to do when I got there, right? But gosh, it was just that exciting. Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Yeah, when we took our kids for the first time, that was a pretty special moment. Like, you really did see how magical Disney was. However, my most memorable experience is when I left my kids at home. And so, during COVID, my cousin, who lives in Florida, reached out to me. And she's like, hey, if you ever wanted to experience the Star Wars land in Disney World, like, this is the time to come.
Yeah.
And she sent me this picture with like barely anybody in it. And so I looked at my wife and I was like, we should go. And so just spur of the moment, and this is totally not usually how we do things, but my birthday was coming up and I was like, I just want to go to Disney World for 2 days. And so we bought red-eye tickets. We jumped on a plane Wednesday night. We landed Thursday morning, and we went right to Animal Kingdom, which is my favorite of all the Disney parks. And just experienced it. And we rode all of the rides twice, some of them 3 times, and we were done by 2:30 in the afternoon. Like, the whole park was ours. And then the next day we went to Hollywood Studios to experience the whole Star Wars thing. And I have a picture on my phone of walking to Tower of Terror, down the main street to Tower of Terror, and there's nobody in the street. Like, it's just my wife and I walking to the Tower of Terror. I don't know how they made any money. I don't care. But Disney has forever been ruined for me, because I didn't have to wait in a single line. Like the Avatar ride, that's 3-4 hours long. We walked on in 20 minutes, and only 20 minutes, because that's how long it took us to get through all of the
the queue.
the queue to get there.
Gosh.
Yeah, it was unbelievable, and I was like, this is the best Disney experience ever. Like, I did everything I wanted to. And I even found things that I didn't even know existed, because, when you go there and all the crowds, you're like, what's the next big thing that we can stand in line for 2 hours to do? And this one was like, wait, they have like an art center that you can learn to draw, and they got real gorillas at Animal Kingdom. Let's go look at those, right? Yeah. So anyways, it was a lot of fun and super memorable in that space.
That's awesome.
So being the guy that is like all things Walt Disney, like the history better than anybody I know about, like the beginning of Disney and the dream and all of that kind of stuff. So maybe share a bit about Walt's dream and the whole reason that even Disneyland and Disney World eventually became into existence.
Yeah. So the really cool thing about Walt's story is that, I mean, like in the 40s, he was already really successful. I mean, he failed and succeeded multiple times in his career.
And probably as like an artist, right? Like, isn't that
it
was the stop motion cartoons and stuff?
Yep. So doing cartoons, and then he had the audacious idea of, I want to do a feature-length movie, which was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Yeah.
And his artistic sense, his win was, if people cry when she dies, I was successful.
Wow.
Because cartoons were funny back then, and
Yeah.
he wanted to evoke the emotion of human beings, the deepest emotion. So he was already successful with that.
Yeah. He makes my mom cry every time she watches it.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And so he was already a huge success. And a neat thing about Walt is, so he had 2 daughters, and one of his life disciplines was Saturday was for the girls. So every Saturday he would spend the day playing with his daughters, and I mean, their backyard. I mean, like he had a train that went around their backyard.
Of course he did.
So yeah, just because he had the means to do that.
Yeah.
But one of his grievances was if he went to a carnival in the 40s or a fair or something, they had activities for kids to do, and parents would sit on a park bench and watch their kids play. And furthermore, those environments were like really seedy, like the individuals, the carnies, and all that stuff. Like, it wasn't a family place. So Walt literally sat on the park bench watching his daughters play and said, I wish there was a place where parents and kids could play together that was safe, and they would both equally enjoy it. And I remember the first time that I read that, and it made me think, because you and I can't fathom a world without Disneyland.
Right. Yeah.
But Walt, like, nobody could understand even the concept of what he was saying, but his motivation was, I want a place where I can play with my girls and other people can interact with their kids in a way that's fun, safe, and wholesome. And then, the fundraising, the vision casting, all those things that I just love.
Yeah.
And he created a reality that we can't imagine a world without it. So
Yeah, it's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Did you watch on Disney Plus the whole like show that they put together where it was like the building of Disney and
like 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course you did. Hey, my name is Matt Manning, and I am the senior pastor here at Crossroads Church, and hopefully you are loving what you're listening to today. If you are, we would love for you to go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. You can leave us a comment. We read all of them. And if you like it, we'd love for you to share this with a friend. Every week we get together as a church to celebrate what God is doing, and you can join us every Sunday at 8:30, 10, and 11:30 online or in-house. Let's get back to the podcast. Of course she did. Of course she did. It's so fascinating to me of all the hardship that he actually had to overcome to see the dream come into reality. Like today, we just think of Disney like being able to print money and do whatever they want.
Yeah.
But it was actually a real struggle for him to succeed in seeing this dream of creating a place where parents could play with their kids. In California, it's fascinating to watch.
Yeah. And even a part of that was culturally at the time in the 40s. For dads especially. I mean, dads were a lot of them were coming back from the war, and they weren't even like the role of parents in the lives of their kids. I mean, men were providers. Yeah. They were somewhat distant. So, I mean, Walt had the luxury, if you will, of like, Saturday is my day with the girls, and I'm going to guard that. But even the value of parents interacting with their kids and playing together was somewhat of a foreign concept. Yeah, and I would even say probably today, we're doing this parenting series at Crossroads and getting that all launched and really talking to parents of all ages. What does it look like to be a good parent in this day and age? The world has changed so much, but one of those like unchangeable truths or principles in the world is just parents being with their kids. Like so oftentimes, we're like the chauffeur drivers, right? Or we're the watchers over the park or whatever it is in our lives. We provide food, and those things. But this understanding that Walt grabbed a hold of just like being with the kids. And part of it, a little bit just reminds me of like Jesus with the kids. And we were talking about this a little bit earlier of Luke 18:16, where the disciples are all like shooing away the kids that are running to Jesus, right? And he says, no, let the little kids come to me, right? Like, let them be with me, and don't think of yourself so full to hinder them in this space, right? Like, and then he says, for the kingdom of God is such of these things. And just this being in the presence of our kids,
is so big to me in terms of the way that God looks upon us, right? He calls us children of God, the way that we look to our kids. And so, talk to me a little bit about you raising your two kids and how you, these memorable times or the ways that you've tried to apply just that idea of being with kids or playing with your kids in that space. What's that look like for you and your family?
Yeah. So with a son and a daughter, it was a different because of activities, right?
Yeah.
Our daughter danced and loved drama, and so in some ways, some of those things were kind of hard for me to interact
Yeah.
with. Like a dance was a really hard one, right?
Yeah, you're not very good.
Oh, I'm really bad. Yeah, when 6'5" guys have to be funny.
Yeah.
Because they won't ever like attract a mate any other way, right? So it's
right.
yeah. So I'm glad I had that. But,
That's hilarious.
but like with my son, I mean, a baseball was a biggie, and for me, it was like kind of like my Disneyland experience, like my experience as a kid, like that you kind of take for granted as a kid. But man, when I was playing catch with my son and teaching him how to catch,
Yeah.
and teach him how to hold a bat, and then I'm going back to when my brother, like in the backyard, like taught me how to throw a curveball, mess my elbow up, right, and all
You were
that.
too little.
Yeah, but like, so a part of the contrast for me, and it really made me think about there's those things that I did where I went to the activities of my kids. So using baseball as an example, right?
Yeah.
Like my son loved baseball. And I clearly influenced that too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a Giants fan, right? Like Dodgers was never an option in our household.
At least he got that right.
But so I went to his world.
Yeah.
But I also I think tried to invite him to my world too. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because there are certain passions that I have. I mean, even talking about music, right?
Yeah.
It was like I introduced him to U2, and then over the years we talked about why do I love this band, the sounds, the textures, the lyrics. But I invited him to my happy place.
Yeah.
Like I played Where the Streets Have No Name, and like it's the most beautiful sound I've ever, or like my world stopped when I heard that for the first time. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
Right. And like to recreate that with my kid and invite him into my world.
Oh, that's good.
So yeah, so in the application of that for me, it's the going to their heart and their activities
Yeah.
and their smaller world, and also inviting them into mine.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I think of that in my own life of a couple like instances. One is last summer, my kids aren't into baseball, but one of the memories that I have growing up with my dad is playing catch with him. And so I got them, or we already had, just gloves, and we got baseballs. And one time each week for each kid. So like Monday was Mercy, Tuesday was Theo. You can see a theme here. Thursday, sadly, it didn't work out for Caden. But I would take the kids down to the park, and it was just, we're going to toss ball for 30 minutes, and we're just going to have a conversation. And, it was just deeply impactful conversation and just a eye-opening into their world as we just were with each other, just throwing a baseball. My oldest son now, he's going to be in high school next year. He's 8th grade, and all of a sudden muscles have become important to him. And so we got him trained over at the rec center, but Monday and Friday mornings, he's actually getting out of bed at 6 in the morning, and we're going over to the rec center and just lifting weights. And, it's just a precious time of just being and talking with him and inviting him a little bit into my world, and he, he inviting me into his and that kind of spaces. And then, one of the memorable things of just being is like, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Like as much as you love Disney, like Star Wars is it for me. And so all of my kids have seen all of the Star Wars movies and have watched them. And, some of them are like, Dad, these are terrible. And it's like, shut up, kid. You're going to watch it, right? And this, but my daughter, she was so precious. We watched it this last year. And so we're doing our Star Wars marathon. And we watched, movie 1, 2, and 3. And then, let's see, Rogue One. And what was the one? Anyways, we all in order. And then we get to episode 4, right? And then Mercy finds out that little Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader, right? In the space. And it was like when she looked in that moment in episode 3, when that happened, she looked at me and she was like, what?
Terror.
Right?
Yeah.
Like in seeing the excitement, I was like, oh, that's the
Yes.
excitement I felt when I
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
learned of this too, right?
Yeah.
In that space. And so just to be able to share those moments and just to, while we're passively watching a movie, right? My daughter's like a cuddler, so she's sitting on my lap, right? And it's like, man, I wouldn't trade that for a million years. And just to be with our kids is, I think, and to experience the world and the creativity and to be in awe of story, all of that is just, it's so precious.
Well, and hearing that, it really accomplishes two things. Like one is it creates vulnerability, right? Because you're sharing something that you love.
Yeah.
So like, so and there's something scary in that, right? When they're like these graphics suck. It was like,
Yeah.
it was the 70s. It's like, give them, cut them some.
I don't care if they are, you'll watch it.
Yeah. So there's vulnerability there,
Yeah.
but also there's the merging of those worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, in our time and in our space, right, in a world that's increasingly devaluing kids, in it for parents and particularly for fathers, to go, no, my kid's of value. Like there's time in my world to pick up a ball and play baseball. There's time in my world to sit down and watch an anime movie with my son, which now I know what he experienced watching Star Wars. I watched that with anime, and it's like,
I don't get it either.
Yeah.
Like, but I want to.
Yeah, I want to, and I'm interested, right? Like I know more about Pokemon because of my son than I would ever know in my entire life, because it's something that he's interested in, And so there's regular times where we just go out on walks and we're talking together and we're playing Pokemon Go on the phone, and those are like those precious moments that just speak value into our kids' lives. That will, my hope is, that will create a relationship that goes on for years beyond them being in my home.
Yeah. And I mean, as it comes to music or movies and things like that, but then as we think about faith and really the idea that like our kids get to stand before God and choose who they follow, but we have influence, and how do we steward that? I mean, I remember, our kids have always grown up around church because I'm a pastor.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I remember when Wilson was, probably 7 years old, and seeing him in the batter box with 2 strikes on him.
Yeah.
And seeing him step out and go,
just scared.
Yeah. And well, no, praying.
Oh, praying.
and I asked him afterwards, like at first base, like, hey, what were you doing? And he was like, I was just asking God to give me a base hit.
Oh, wow.
But in his little world, like that was a critical moment.
Yeah.
And that was faith in action in a very real way. Does it make sense? So
absolutely.
So it's like it's not Sunday school. It's like this is, and for you and I, like we pray about super complex things, sometimes selfish things, right? Yeah. But for him, I was so proud of him because, praise God, he got a base hit, and I met him at first base, and he told me what he was doing, right?
Yeah.
But all of those things converged,
and
he made a faith decision in that moment to cry out to God.
Yeah, one of the things that I constantly go back to, like in my own parenting, that's just had such an impact on me, is that what we do matters, right? As parents, that we are instruments placed in the hands of God to bring our children into a place where they're conscious of God, right? Like we can't save our kids. Ultimately, Jesus is the one who saves. But we can do everything in our power to create a home, to create an environment that ultimately goes, Jesus is really good. God is, you should pay attention to this. And we can show you the goodness of God in this relationship. And then to watch our kids as they start to live their life, to see that faith actually impact their lives, maybe not in the same way, right, that it impacts ours, but to see it, how it impacts their life, and to sit back and just go, man, God, thank you. Thank you that I get to be a part of the blessing, to see this person that you've created find dependence in you.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I share a quick story? So like when my daughter was in middle school, I think, and we go get a frappuccino and just talk and catch up. Yeah. And I remember we were having the conversation about music, and I just said, so who are you listening to? And at the time it was Imagine Dragons. Yeah. I didn't know of them yet. And then I asked, well, great. So what's your favorite song? And she said, oh, a song called Demons. And I was like, hey, why don't we go to the car and listen, right? And the incredible thing for me was when I heard the song and then I was able to ask, so what do you like about it? And it was like, because it's talking about this person feels all these things that they want to do, but they know that they're bad for them. And they're crying out for something greater. Oh, wow. And we ended up having this beautiful talk about God and about sin and about like faith became real in that moment.
Yeah.
And if I would have squashed it at like, that's a bad song. It was like, it's actually a beautiful song. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Because it opened up a door and it resonated with her middle school heart in a way that sermons don't.
And your willingness to be with her in those moments and to explore her world and to enter into her world created opportunity for you to speak to the things that are good, right? And for you to have that conversation in a way that gives opportunity for life.
Yeah.
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 Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. So, well, hey, our time is up today, so I want to thank you.
Thank you
for being a part of this, and you will see a lot more of James in the future. Look at that face. Like, that is a podcasting face.
What does that mean for the people that are
just
listening?
You should just you should figure that out. We have a radio face, right? We have a stage face. Now we have a podcast face. So however you want to interpret that. But hey, if you enjoyed this, we have a podcast on YouTube that you can catch every other week. And I also want to invite you to Crossroads Church online or in-house, 8:30, 10, 11:30 every Sunday. And throughout the next couple of weeks, we are talking about parenting and the 6 things that every parent needs to know. And so I want to thank you for joining us today on Pastors on Pop, and we'll see you next time.